big-screen TV lounge to watch the Evil Dead trilogy, camped out in the lobby to conduct Dungeons & Dragons campaigns, and whiled away weekends playing the then-new fantasy trading card game Magic the Gathering, all while debating the finer points of The Lord of the Rings. I also started using the internet, and sending and receiving emails, including lengthy chain letters analyzing unintended sexual innuendo in Star Wars, as well as lists of every episode of Star Trek. Those, plus the burgeoning Internet Movie Database, rapidly rendered my old Trek notebooks obsolete. I stumbled into chat rooms where people were arguing endlessly about science fiction, fantasy, and superhero comics, and having tremendously long conversations dissecting things like last week's episodes of Babylon 5 and The X-Files. I realized, with no small amount of surprise, that, as obsessed as I was, others were yet more obsessed. That realization made me back away from geek life. I was less nerdy than my youth had led me to believe. I had other interests: creative writing, punk rock, experimental films, and I was increasingly aware of the fact that outside the geek dorm's ivied walls, the rest of the world was patiently waiting. So it was that, at the end of my senior year, I convinced myself I needed to grow up. I sold my comics and my magic cards, bought a car, got a job, and prepared to enter adulthood. I needn't have bothered. It was 1998, and geeks were about to inherit the earth. Had I been paying closer attention while in college, I might have noticed that the real world was quietly changing. In early 1997, George Lucas re-released the original Star Wars trilogy to theaters in the form of the special editions. I was, of course, tremendously excited and went to see the films with my friends, but failed to observe how the movies played with others. As far as I knew, we nerds were the only ones buying tickets. But if so, then how did the theaters sell out? Unbeknownst to me, Geek was going mainstream. 2 years later is arguably when Geek broke. On March 31st, 1999, Americans woke up to find The Matrix playing at their local multiplexes. The film proved a smash hit, the must-see movie of the summer, and deeply influential for years to come. Other geek milestones followed in rapid succession. Star Wars Episode I, The Phantom Menace, was released to tremendous fanfare on May 19th, and while reactions were conflicted, to say the least, it still wound up becoming the highest-grossing movie of the year. The Iron Giant arrived in theaters on August 6th, and while it didn't fare well commercially, it heralded a new, adult-oriented approach to animation and enabled its director, Brad Bird, to later make the better-known Pixar hit The Incredibles. Finally, the Star Trek parody Galaxy Quest came out on Christmas Day, doing surprisingly well by appealing to general viewers as well as Trekkers. To understand the change that was underway, it's important to remember what else was popular at that time. Seinfeld had just gone off the air, ceding its kingdom to the likes of Frasier, Friends, ER, and Sex and the City. The box office, meanwhile, was dominated by films like Saving Private Ryan, There's Something About Mary, Rush Hour, and Patch Adams, none of which screamed geek. 3 other top films at the time, Armageddon, Deep Impact, and Godzilla, are nominally science fiction, but in reality, they're disaster films. Hollywood was still trying to make another Independence Day, which had lit up screens in 1996. In 1997, the king of the box office and the Academy Awards was Titanic, followed by The Lost World, Jurassic Park, Liar, Liar, As Good as It Gets, and Good Will Hunting. With the exceptions of Men in Black and the Star Wars special editions, geeks were mostly underground, delighting in TV shows like Deep Space Nine, Babylon 5, and Mystery Science Theater 3000, as well as movies like Star Trek First Contact, The Fifth Element, and Starship Troopers. After 1999, however, things really started to change. July 14, 2000, saw the release of Bryan Singer's X-Men, the first blockbuster film starring Marvel characters, which would mark the beginning of a new wave of superhero movies. The following year, the 2 highest-grossing films were Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, based of course on the first Harry Potter book, which had been published in 1997, and The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. Both not only proved to be crossover hits, but launched franchises that inspired dozens of imitators, promising plenty more fantasy to come. In 2002, the top 4 films were Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, which became the first